Today's trip down the Turnpike is brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And now get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with drizzly.com. Welcome to Turnpike Sports. I'm Dave Weishuttle, and as always, I'm joined by my producer and co-host, Doug Weishuttle. Doug, another interesting week in the NFL.
It's always interesting.
It's always, a lot of new faces. Some
the amount of new
quarterbacks are doing well. Some are not, and very, very intriguing.
The one consistent thing so far through the first 3 weeks of the season, my Jets suck.
Well, mono, really? The quarterback gets mono?
Well, again, they had. We were watching the Patriots game as well as the Eagles game and all that stuff, and wow, with the Jets having 4 starters, it's becoming painfully obvious they have no depth on that team. They have no backups that can actually play any of the positions well.
But on the bright side, with regard to the Jets, they had that backdoor cover, which sent a lot of New England Patriot bettors into a frenzy.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of the books were taken. Regardless of that spread, whether it was 20, 23, whatever, they were taking a lot of bets on the Patriots.
So right now,
same with the Cowboys, too.
So right now, the interesting stat about that is when the Patriots are favored by 20 or more points, Belichick is 0-5 now against the spread. So keep that in mind, Patriots fans, if you want to bet on the Patriots and they think that it's going to be an easy win.
They don't need to worry about it this week. They only got a 7-point spread right now against the Bills.
Well, we got a great show coming up for you. Now, whether you play fantasy sports or you're a sports bettor, information is the key to your success. And this week, we're going to have the president and co-founder of RotoWire, which is the greatest resource for fantasy sports and sports betting. We're going to have the president and co-founder, Peter Schenke, which is a fascinating interview. And then we're going to have...
Fascinating guy.
Absolutely. And then we're going to have the book report where we talk about what's going on in the sports books across the country. And then we're going to have our picks. Well, like I said, it's a busy week in sports, so let's take a trip down the Turnpike. Today's trip down the Turnpike is brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And now get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using our promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with drizzly.com.
Exit 1.
Couple of news and notes in the sports betting industry this week, as always.
Yep.
The NFL has finally gotten a sports betting partner.
Finally.
Sort of.
No.
Sort of. The NFL and Tab Corp have entered into a partnership to bring the NFL programming and experiences to fans in Australia.
Okay, so this is...
it's not an American deal.
Okay, this is for overseas. This is for Australia. They're broadening their markets.
Right. Tabcorp has a network, a commercial network of more than 4,400 pubs, clubs, and agencies that get their sports betting information and programming, and this is going to be the NFL stuff is going to be incorporated into it. Part of the deal is also that Tabcorp's programming with the Sky Channel, They're going to have some NFL Network programming and 6 hours of NFL game and red zone programming as well.
Wow.
And there's going to be some betting stuff incorporated into this. So it's the first step for the NFL. They're being very slow and cautious and deliberate in what they're doing, and I think it's actually kind of nice to see them starting to get their toes wet. Be interesting to see who they partner with in the United States. The Australia thing, kind of leads me to believe it's maybe one of the Australian books, that sort of thing, that may be doing some work in the
Maybe
United
it's one
States.
of those, we'll test out the markets and see how things go.
Also, the Oregon Lottery has finally set a date for their much-delayed online sports betting app.
Finally.
Scoreboard will be launching the second week of October. They had hoped to do it before the beginning of pro football season. They had a lot of testing to do. There's still more testing going on, which is why it's the second week of October. They're looking at the financial transaction sections.
It's very interesting. You have all these states doing sports betting. You would think, the testing period would go a little quicker for these other states who are coming along now. But apparently not.
No, they're taking their time. They're doing the right thing.
They want to do it right.
Oregon's already got sports betting with 2 casinos out there. So, the online app is coming out. And,
now, this scoreboard from the Oregon Lottery, this is going to be Oregon's first sports betting app.
It's going to be the first part of Oregon's mobile and online sports betting world.
All right.
This is all through the Oregon Lottery website and the app Scoreboard.
And it's called Scoreboard.
Scoreboard.
All right.
Speaking of apps, Apple has pushed back the deadline for getting online the gambling apps into the native Apple language, whatever.
I got to tell you, when this news came out during the summer, they had so many gaming developers in the gambling industry scurrying because, to be honest, September 3rd was not, I don't think it was feasible for a lot of places to just change their programming and change their language. I'm not a computer guy, so you're a computer guy, Doug. What do they have to do?
It's a matter of changing the architecture behind the app programming.
And that was...
I know that doesn't explain anything.
Yeah, and that apparently was too big of a job for September 3rd, to be done by September 3rd. So mercifully, Apple is allowing them March 3rd,
When you're developing an app, especially for Apple, you have a choice. You can adapt your HTML language for the app, for the Google Play Store, whatever you want to call it. You can rewrite that entire code, which is going to take a long, long time to pinpoint where you have to differentiate. Or you can do, from scratch, native iOS language, which also will take a lot of time because you got to adapt what you're doing online to the App Store, Apple App Store.
Okay, so now Apple pushed the deadline back to March 3rd, which is 6 months from now.
Right, they got another 6 months.
So, and that should be enough time for everyone to get their Apple.
Maybe.
Okay, no, not
don't.
No, well, hey,
two other little news and notes. New Hampshire Lottery just received 13 proposals for their sports betting operations.
Good.
They hope to have sports betting up and running both retail and mobile by early 2020.
Okay.
And for us being local in the Philadelphia area, this was actually kind of interesting news. Fox 29 is launching its own sports betting TV show. The unique thing here, it's a 15-minute TV show.
Which is interesting, and seriously, do you need more than 15 minutes? Get the information out, get it going, and they got some really good people involved with this.
Todd Furman, you have the former Eagle, Gary Kopp. And one of the local sports guys.
Yep. Scott Grayson, yep.
Okay. So that's the brand new show. It's 15 minutes. It's just going to be bare bones, but it's going to be probably intense 15 minutes. For bettors. Good.
I like the fact, you get the information out. I mean, a lot of these shows, you have to sit through a lot of crap, really. I mean, they're great. Lock It In, with Daily Wager and things like that. They're great. A lot of great information, but sometimes you just got to wade through a lot of, useless information that you really don't need or not interested in. And I like the fact that this is 15 minutes. Boom, you're in, you're out, and awesome.
Yeah, and it's probably going to be like a little shot of what Daily Wager is. If it's going to be just straight new, 15 minutes of just right in your face kind of stuff.
Exit 2.
I just mentioned ESPN over there in that last little comment regarding Daily Wager and all that stuff. We have a new sports network coming down the road here. And this one is going to deal with just esports. They're launching what is called VENN, the Video Game Entertainment and News Network.
Okay, all right.
It's basically going to be what ESPN is to traditional sports, VEN is going to be to esports. So they're going to start off with about 55 hours of original programming on esports and gaming. They're going to have...
So where is this going to be, though? Is this going to be...
They've already made deals
basic
with Twitch.
Cable?
No, they've made deals with Twitch and YouTube.
All right.
They're also in the process of working out deals with Roku and Sling.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so
that's good.
They're going to be having 55 hours of original programming, gamer streams, talk shows, documentaries, live events. Basically, everything ESPN's doing, they're going to do their own version of it for the gamers.
Hey, which is good. They
Yep.
need something. I mean, it's becoming mainstream, and I think they should have a vehicle to show the people involved and show the different tournaments, and I think it's great.
Well, they have the right people in place. They raised $17 million from investors, and the investors include co-founders of Twitch, Riot Games, and Blizzard Entertainment. So that automatically gives them access to League of Legends, Overwatch, Call of Duty, and Fortnite right off the bat. So they actually have the right investors, the right access, and the right amount of capital to launch this thing. So it should be fun to watch it grow.
Wow.
Exit 3.
Speaking of streaming services, DAZN has made some moves. They just recently launched in the U.S., and for people who still aren't familiar with DAZN, they are a OTT channel that is designed to broadcast MMA events, combat fighting, the non-traditional sports events. Not boxing, but the combat sports.
Oh, by the way, it's spelled DAZN.
DAZN.
So, DAZN. Okay.
But they have made a deal, their first major distribution deal in the United States, with Comcast.
Which is great. Does that mean, are we going to see a lot of their programming on cable? Because, Comcast has sport networks. In Philadelphia, they have Comcast Sports Network.
It's not going to be on the channel lineups.
No, not on the channel lineup. So this is going to be...
one of their apps.
Okay, great.
You know how right now people that have Xfinity X1 boxes in their homes, you have that app section where you can get Netflix, YouTube, all that stuff.
Sure.
Right now, it's only going to be made available to customers of Comcast that have the Xfinity Flex box, which is a different type of...
I have no clue what that is.
It's basically their streaming stick.
Okay. All right. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's basically like the little Roku box.
And you still have to pay for a DAZN?
You will be paying $19.99 per month or $99.99 for a full year subscription to DAZN. And again, it's starting off with the Xfinity Flex box immediately. Later on this autumn, it's going to be part of the X1 service for Xfinity. So everyone who is an X1 subscriber or have one of those desktop boxes, they're going to be able to access the DAZN if they actually subscribe to it.
Okay.
This follows everything after they just launched last year in the United States, and they've already made deals not only with a bunch of different combat sports leagues, but they have baseball, and also they've been talking about a hockey thing, but they definitely have a deal with Major League Baseball for a red zone type show with baseball.
Wow, okay.
So it'll be interesting to see exactly how much more DAZN grows, because I that's a very interesting streaming company.
Absolutely.
Exit 4.
And I'm not a huge fan of seltzers, hard seltzers.
I've never tried one. I gotta be honest.
Yes, you have.
Have I? Why? What were they
White
called?
Claw.
White Claw. Okay.
Unfortunately,
Oh wait,
I've had a White
I think
Claw
I did.
at
Yeah,
a promotion.
there was a promotion, and someone gave me a White Claw to try. I thought it was very good. I mean, it's one of those things you really don't taste the alcohol in it, which is a very dangerous drink, by the way. If you can't taste the alcohol, but it was all right. But boy, they're everywhere now.
Well, they're going to be even more everywhere, if that's a phrase. The NHL has signed a 5-year U.S. partnership with Boston Beer Company, which is the makers of Truly Hard Seltzer. Truly will be the official hard seltzer of the league.
All right.
First national sports partnership for either Boston Beer or the Truly brand.
Okay.
So groundbreaking stuff there.
So this is across the league, huh?
This is across the league, not individual teams.
Okay. So, this is everyone.
Because I know Boston Beer does stuff with the Boston Bruins.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, it's, great.
But
Okay.
this is the Truly brand. This follows on the heels in August of the NFL making a league partnership deal with Bon and Viv.
I've seen those commercials. I've seen those posters everywhere, Bon.
Yeah,
I've not tried them yet.
Never tried Bon and Viv, but that's made by the guys who do Budweiser.
Yeah, I'm very clueless when it comes to seltzer or the hard seltzer, so I'm learning as I go. Maybe I'll watch a Flyers game and have a truly hard seltzer watching it.
Well, I in doing research for this, they mentioned the video promotion they did with ESPN. They had Adam Schefter doing a lie detector test with 50 people doing a taste test.
Wait a minute.
Between
I think
Bon and Viv, and they did a White Claw one.
I think I saw that.
I didn't.
I didn't pay
it.
too close attention to it, but I remember Schefter doing a commercial and with a lie detector. So I didn't know that was Bon and Viv.
That was Bon and Viv.
Okay, all right.
According to the results, out of the 50 people, 46 preferred Bon and Viv. I'm not surprised at that result since it was sponsored by Bon and Viv.
Yeah.
But, it's one of those things. And according to Nielsen, this is set to become a $1 billion category in the drink market.
All right.
Hard seltzers.
And today's trip down the Turnpike was brought to you by Drizzly, your online liquor store. Available in over 95 cities across North America, Drizzly offers a huge selection and competitive pricing with a side of personalized content. Now there's no need to leave the house. Get alcohol delivered in less than an hour by Drizzly. Head on over to drizzly.com and order today. And I'll get $5 off your first order of $20 or more when using our promo code DRINK19 at checkout. Shop beer, wine, and liquor with drizzly.com.
And as always, get in touch with Turnpike Sports. Call or text us at 609-512-5910, 609-512-5910, at Turnpike Sports on Facebook and Twitter. Info at turnpikesportsradio.com is our email address. You can also catch the show on your smart TV, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Just head on over to turnpikesportsradio.com and click on the link for our smart TV channel. You can subscribe to the show through iTunes. It's also distributed through iHeartMedia. We have a YouTube channel. And don't forget to order your International Bikini Team calendar. Info at internationalbikini-team.org is the ordering information for your calendar there. And I almost forgot, the show is also available to radio.com listeners. Go to radio.com's mobile app and you'll find Turnpike Sports in the directory there.
Stick around later. We have the Turnpike Sports Book Report where we talk about what's going on in the sports books across the country. And then after that, we're going to have picks. But right after this commercial break, I'm going to be talking with Peter Schenke, the president and co-founder of RotoWire. He's coming out with something amazing for sports bettors called CoverWire, and he's going to tell us all about it when we get back with Turnpike Sports. Hey, this is Dave Weishuttle from Turnpike Sports with this week's Bet Flash. Fox Sports and the Stars Group have launched a predictive game in the U.S. Fox Sports Super 6 is a free-to-play game where fans can win up to $250,000 by predicting the outcome of college and NFL games. The game is not considered gambling since players do not have to spend money to enter the contest. The Oregon Lottery has announced that its new online sports betting game Scoreboard will launch the second week of October. Once active, people in Oregon will be able to bet on professional sports online through the lottery's website and the Scoreboard app. And finally, Fox 29 in Philadelphia is launching a sports betting television show. The show, called Props and Locks, will air weekly on the network and will be only 15 minutes long. The show will be hosted by former Eagles linebacker Gary Cobb, sports reporter Scott Grayson, and Fox betting expert Todd Furman. From the seaside to the desert, from the betting lines to the sites online, Turnpike Sports has got you covered. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at Turnpike Sports.
you, come here. Haven't you heard? We don't need to hide anymore. Now, we can shop privately for adult products at adamandeve.com. They've got massage oils, lingerie, and lots more we can't mention here. Use offer code SPICE404. They'll give you 50% off almost any one item, 3 free DVDs, free mystery gift, and free shipping. That's 50% off, free shipping, and more. Private shopping starts at adamandeve.com.
Welcome back to Turnpike Sports. Dave Weishuttle with you here. You know, whether you play season-long fantasy, daily fantasy, visit sports books, or play on the online books, information is the key to your success. And if you're a fantasy sports fan, you know all about RotoWire and the great services they provide. But now RotoWire is bringing their expertise to the sports betting public. And to talk all about it, we have the president and co-founder of RotoWire, Peter Schenke, on the line. Peter, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show.
As I said, certainly fans of fantasy sports are aware of RotoWire, but for those who are not too familiar with the company, can you give us a little background on RotoWire and the services they provide?
Sure. So it's been around since 1997. We were sort of the first people to do fantasy sports news and information on the internet in real time, and it's evolved to the point where we have thousands of subscribers who subscribe to rotowire.com, and helps you win your fantasy football league or fantasy sports league with things like player news and injury information and projections and rankings and all those kinds of tools. In addition, we also syndicate that information to just about every fantasy sports company. So even if you don't know RotoWire and you play on ESPN, NFL.com, Yahoo, DraftKings, FanDuel, our information is there with the little injury icons or the player notes you read inside those systems and a lot of the projections and stuff behind the scenes. So, it's been a fun 20 plus years, and it's been a blast doing it.
I was telling you off air, I'm a big fan of RotoWire, and it's essential if you're a fantasy sports player. But what was your philosophy when you started RotoWire? What did you see in the market that made you think RotoWire would be a successful venture?
Well, my background is I'm a journalist, and I worked in the financial markets, and I covered futures and stocks and options. And I used to actually work in the Chicago futures pits, and people yelling and screaming at each other, making trades, and I'd have to figure out, what was going on, why prices went up, why they went down. And I'd write stories every day for Newswire. And, I used like the Bloomberg terminal and similar type of things that were on the trading floor. That was sort of the internet before the internet. And I saw how a lot of the information was presented, the way you could, type in a stock ticker or a financial instruments symbol and get a whole bunch of data, information, and news. And I thought, that's kind of like fantasy sports. Why don't we build this for fantasy sports so that you could figure out what was going on with, backup running backs and fourth outfielders in different cities where you didn't get the local paper. I mean, obviously a lot has changed since then, but the overall premise and theory worked pretty well and still going strong.
You predicted my next question. I read your background. You're a reporter for Dow Jones and Wall Street Journal covering the markets, and I was curious when I saw that. When you're analyzing information regarding sports, is it the same thought process when analyzing stocks and markets? Because now I know a lot of bettors are calling themselves sports investors, and I just thought it was an interesting background that you had for the business you're in now.
Yeah, fantasy sports and to some degree sports betting is all risk management. You're trying to make an evaluation and projection and figure out a market and what that's worth. Whether it's drafting an individual player in a fantasy sports league or making a bet on a line on a football game, you need to evaluate that. So it's very similar. in the stock market, there used to be saying that stock market is gambling. It's just with societal benefit, and so there's just a lot of similarities, for sports information is no different.
Well, I mentioned sports betting, and RotoWire is now getting into the sports betting information part of the business. What is RotoWire doing with regard to sports betting?
So we launched a website called CoverWire.com. That's going to be kind of our hub for sports betting information. We're going to try and take the things that have made us successful in fantasy sports, real-time news on players and teams, really in-depth analysis and information and data on teams and players, and port that over to sports betting and try to help sports bettors as more and more are able to legally do that in the U.S. And I think we're going to be able to adapt and come up with new ideas and products and metrics and stats and content for a lot of the new things that are going to develop in the U.S. market. I think if you look at companies like DraftKings and FanDuel, and you look at what they did for fantasy sports and the innovation they had and all kinds of new products, not just daily fantasy, but single game daily fantasy, in-game daily fantasy, a lot of the ways that you can play it. I mean, they really have, pushed the envelope and come up with new things. And every time they come up with a new game or new format or new twist, it requires a new set of tools and news and information and data to try and, win that game. And so I think sports betting in the U.S. is going to emerge the same way. I think sports betting, from my personal point of view, has been really stale over the last 20 years. I mean, you kind of have money lines and point spreads, and those are obviously the dominant ways to bet on sports. You have a little bit of prop betting, although there's really never much out there beyond the Super Bowl. You have some futures, but you basically have like the title game or the championship odds. There's not a lot of ways to offload that risk in the during the season. There's not a lot of other bets besides that. So I think the marketplace is going to come up here, and particularly with those two companies and their track record, there's going to be a lot of innovation and new products and ideas that I can't even think of, and we're going to be ready to read and react to it.
I interview a lot of people in the business of sports betting, and at the heart of any contract or deal they execute is data. And a lot of sports bettors don't think too much of how the data is collected, but it's a crucial aspect of betting. When we talk about data, what are we talking about, and how is that information collected?
Well, I mean, data is obviously, all the elements of a game that you see, from the basic things of like, who scored the touchdown or hit the home run to, more advanced stuff to, how far the ball traveled in the air, or the exit velocity of a bat during a baseball game. And really what's changed in recent time is that it used to be able that, for example, for baseball, you used to be able to physically go to the game, track it all on a scorecard, and have most of the stats that were collected. And I think a lot of the stat services that came along in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that was their method. Maybe they'd have people live in the stadium, maybe they'd have people watching TV, but that kind of data was easy to obtain. But now you have another level of data since then, where you have all this in-stadium technology, whether it's cameras or radar or Doppler or those kinds of things that are capturing statistics that you can't score by hand by looking at on TV. And so that stuff is all the proprietary of the leagues, and it's really hard to replicate. And that's given them, power over statistics, and that that data has become very, very important in real-world sports as front offices try to evaluate players. It's become important in fantasy as fantasy players are always looking for an edge and some sort of stat to get ahead of everybody else. So they want this, that advanced data. And in the betting world, it has the potential to make a big difference, though it remains to be seen how popular products based on that advanced data will be. But nevertheless, I mean, the leagues themselves sort of have a monopoly on that. And I think that's really kind of the crux of where a lot of this stuff is going, and a lot of the debate is going, for data and who owns it and who can distribute it and that kind of stuff going forward. I don't know that it's necessary as much for the score of the game for a basic, money line or basic NFL wager.
I find it interesting about the data. When someone gets the information about a particular game or a particular team, how different is the thought process between playing fantasy sports and betting on sports? Is it different information you're going to give them, or is it how a person uses it differently, whether they're playing fantasy or sports betting?
Well, I mean, fantasy and gambling are I think a lot different in many ways. Fantasy, you're focusing on individual players, you're competing against other individuals instead of against the house. There's a market to sort of evaluate based on things like average draft position, but for the most part, you're kind of looking at individual player performance. It's very similar to sports betting, but obviously sports betting, you're looking in the context of trying to beat the house, trying to beat the market. There's a line and a vig involved, and all of that kind of stuff. So a lot of the data is really similar, and a lot of it's different. But the play is a little bit different. It's all about playing the game within the game. That's kind of how it is for both sports betting and fantasy, and anything sort of in between. People know the NFL, they know their teams, but then when they start to play fantasy, they don't realize that a really good quarterback who doesn't throw a lot isn't as valuable in fantasy as one who's really talented, who's not as talented, who throws all the time. And I think there's going to be similar parallels to sports betting, where on the surface you may like this team more than that team. You might even like the line and think that that's a line that's ripe to make money on by betting one side of it. But then again, there's a lot of nuances in terms of shopping lines and lines moving and the vig and a whole bunch of other elements that bring a different level of analysis to how to do it.
You mentioned this before, and I'm sitting here in New Jersey, and one of the things everyone's talking about with regard to sports betting is in-play betting, which is so dependent on up-to-date information. How challenging is that for a company to provide information with that speed and that precision, which is essential to the bettor?
Yeah, I think that it becomes pretty challenging. A lot of it is because of the delays for data and the delays for broadcast. It's a kind of a competition for speed in many ways. And so that presents a lot of challenges that I think over time technology will solve. But right now, given that there's a few seconds or more delay on the TV screen versus being at the game and different ways to get you the information electronically, I think that's something that is going to be a problem, I think, for a lot of this stuff. And similarly for the way you collect and write and analyze as well. If we see an injury and try to react to that as fast as possible, whether it's sending out a news alert or updates. There's going to be a similar lag of information. So, I think in the near term, that's always going to be a challenge. But, I imagine over time that those lags are going to get smaller. The technology is going to get better.
You're the perfect person to ask this question. I've been very interested in this. With the explosion of sports betting in the different states, how has that affected the fantasy sports market? Has it hurt the fantasy market, or do you see it as a companion with the fantasy sports market, or has it even helped the fantasy sports market?
I think it's only going to help. It's just more sports, more content, more games to play, more ways to get involved in the games that you're already following. And I think the early data is showing that. DraftKings has come out and said that the people who played fantasy sports and bet, that they've, like 85 or 87%, I forget the exact number, still play fantasy and play daily fantasy. I think the research at the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, which I'm the chairman of, has come out and shown a similar take. And I think that's kind of the general thought process for most people in the fantasy sports business, is that it's just going to be additive, that people play fantasy, they play for usually different reasons than sports betting, compete against their friends, and do research on the players, and that's kind of the motivation in the traditional fantasy sense. Sports betting is a little more focused on winning money and stuff, although there's certainly elements of of enjoying the sport more, and maybe even camaraderie with your friends and that kind of stuff. And so I think it's just going to lift all boats. And most of the people who play fantasy have a lot of disposable income, and it's just going to be extra money that they're going to put into their sports fandom, as opposed to taking money away from fantasy and turning around and putting it on sports betting.
I'm glad you mentioned it, because I was very curious about this. You're chairman of the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association. What is that, and what are the services they provide for the fantasy sports playing community?
So that used to be called the Fantasy Sports Trade Association until just the spring, when we changed the name and expanded the scope with the Supreme Court ruling that overturned PASPA. And so it's been around since the late 90s. And it's been the primary trade group for fantasy sports. We led the effort over the last few years to clarify that fantasy sports are legal games of skill, and passed laws in 21 states confirming that fantasy sports are legal. And so we've really been kind of at the forefront of the industry in terms of doing research, figuring out how people play the games, and just coordinating efforts between all the companies. And we hope to similarly expand, get involved in sports betting, and maybe not as much with the operators, but more just similar type services that are around sports betting. Whether that be other free play contests, content services. Just sort of everybody who's involved in the business, even if it's not directly booking bets.
A couple years back, I remember daily fantasy sports were advertising everywhere. They advertised a lot on this radio program. And I was wondering, with daily fantasy a couple years ago, did that help clear the way for sports betting? Did that make it easier for sports betting to be more acceptable?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I mean, the court case that overturned PASPA that was in New Jersey really, was instigated before daily fantasy sports really, sort of became to the forefront and consciousness of Americans. So I believe that court case and the ultimate PASPA decision would have happened whether daily fantasy sports existed or not. But at the same time, I think that daily fantasy sports came along with a trend that's been around in sort of American culture and American society over the last 40 years. I mean, if you look at just gambling in general, it's just become a lot more acceptable over the last 40 years, whether that's the lottery, casinos, sports betting. I think a poll in the early 90s when people were polled about sports betting around the time PASPA was enacted, the vast majority were against sports betting, and then flip to this decade, it's completely reversed. And I think fantasy sports and daily fantasy sports, it was just came around during that trend, maybe helped fuel the trend. I'm not really sure, but I don't think it was the cause of it. But I do think that one of the things that daily fantasy sports in particular did was the laws that have been passed over the last 5 years to confirm that fantasy sports were legal. I think it really educated a lot of the legislators and stakeholders in these states about a lot of the issues that are similar to both things like geolocation issues with mobile sports betting, and there's a number of ways that that are similar to how people play these things online and are able to use online technology and ways to make it a safe environment for consumers. So a lot of the stuff there's overlap and similarities, and so I think when some of these sports betting bills came along, the legislators were familiar with a lot of the concepts, and I think that made it easier for a state like Iowa, where I actively lobbied for the daily fantasy and fantasy sports bill that passed there, along with the sports betting law this year. And so I think that we weren't starting from the effort to pass sports betting was not starting from scratch as a result.
Now, how can the general public access CoverWire, and will this information be available nationwide? I'm assuming since it's not a gambling site, geolocation or regulations don't apply with regard to access, correct?
Yeah, it's just CoverWire.com. I mean, it's just sports betting information, so really any jurisdiction can utilize it, because we're not booking bets or anything like that. So fortunately we don't face those kinds of issues. But I think as this market evolves, that we'll probably get a little more focused in terms of some states, whether they have different products or operators or some nuances. That's definitely a possibility. But yeah, right now it's just available to everyone. It's just just content and information. And if you live in a jurisdiction where there's not sports betting and you're going to travel to some place where there is legal sports betting, well then you can take advantage of it.
Peter, we're running out of time, but can you give out the website again for RotoWire, CoverWire, and also for the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association? Because I think they're amazing resources for people who play fantasy sports and sports bet.
Yeah, sure. RotoWire.com is the place for fantasy sports information. CoverWire, CoverWire, CoverWire.com is our new sports betting information product. And the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association website is thefsga.org. Definitely a lot of great industry information there. And if you're interested in getting into industry, whether it's fantasy sports or sports betting, that organization has 2 conferences a year, and really it's the best place to meet people in the industry, get to know the industry. So if you're going to start a business or want a job, I always encourage people to go to that. It's really the best place you can go to sort of connect with that world and make some inroads.
Peter Schenke, president and co-founder of RotoWire and now CoverWire, and also the chairman of the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association. Thank you so much for coming on and giving out great information.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks a lot for the time.
Stick around. We'll be right back with more Turnpike Sports.
A real abandoned prison in Philadelphia becomes the #1 haunted attraction in America. Terror Behind the Walls at Eastern State Penitentiary, presented by Lukoil. Are you brave enough to opt in for a more intense experience? You could be grabbed, sent into hidden passageways, and even separated from your group. This is terror like you've never felt. Save $10 with coupons from any Lukoil location. TerrorBehindTheWalls.com.
Turnpike Sports Book Report.
And the Turnpike Sports Book Report is brought to you by BorgataSports.com. Your favorite casino is now your favorite sports book, available anywhere in New Jersey. BorgataSports.com. Sign up at BorgataSports.com using our promo code PIKE. That's PIKE. And you get a risk-free bet up to $250 and 20 bonus dollars at BorgataCasino.com. Must be 21 years or older and in New Jersey to place a bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right.
A lot of interesting bets this week. I'm just seeing some reports, and it's
it's
bizarre.
Last weekend, we had 2 historic spreads.
Sure.
Well, it was the first time we had 2 large spreads like that. Let me put it that way. It was historic that we had 2 20-point spreads.
Yeah. Yep.
Dallas and the Patriots were both favored by over 20 points against the Jets and the Dolphins, respectively.
And by the way, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Bill Belichick is 0-5 when the Patriots are favored by more than 20 points. So keep that in mind later in the season.
Well, like I'd also mentioned, there's no 20-point spread for the Patriots this week.
No.
They're playing the Bills, which seem to be an incredibly tough team this year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this is going to be a big test for them coming up. I think we're going to see what kind of team they are. So,
well, just some numbers from last week. At Caesar Sportsbooks, almost 75% of the point spread bets were on the Patriots, and 62% of those bets were on the Cowboys for those games.
Okay. Well, you did well with the Cowboys, but not with the Patriots.
Well, you know what? I was surprised that the big spreads did not scare away bettors.
Boy, with the problems the Jets have been having this year, certainly it took a lot of guts for anyone to place money on the Jets. But hey, your courage paid off if you went with the Jets.
Well, who knew that they were going to throw in the backup quarterback and he was going to throw in pick 6?
Well, yeah, that was.
Yeah,
I would love. I think I told you at the time. I'd love to see the reaction in the sports books in Rhode Island, because I think that's the only New England state that has sports books.
Yeah,
it must have been. The people must have been pulling their hair out.
Well, again, that anyone in New England automatically bets the Patriots on everything.
Sure.
Or any kind of New England team, I should say.
Sure.
But Yeah, it was fun to watch that backdoor cover there. I love the fact that after the guy threw the pick six, they brought Brady back in,
which was a little weird. I mean, why risk injury in that game? But hey, whatever. Yeah. I don't know.
I wonder if betting had any influence.
I'm sure it didn't.
It probably did.
I'm sure it didn't. But it was weird to see that. It was very weird to see that.
Other little news and notes: he had a $208,000 money line bet on the Vikings over at DraftKings.
All right.
To beat the Raiders straight up. Minnesota won by 20, so they were fine there. They won $56,000 on that bet. PointsBet had a $390,000 two-team money line parlay on the Packers and 49ers.
All right, they did well.
$300,000 win.
Wow. Okay.
So lot of good bets being made. I mean, even over at Caesars in Vegas, the Rams were the most bet game this past weekend. Same thing as Stations Casino, and also MGM Books. Had 9 times the amount of money bet on the Rams than the Browns.
And they covered, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't know if there was some differences in some of the sports books, but if you bet on the Rams, I think you did well.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
and
so, regardless of what sports books you were at.
One of the more interesting things, and everyone's talking about this, I know, it's this Daniel Jones effect for MVP of the league. Too soon.
I think everyone has this. I think a lot of these channels have overreaction Monday, and I think this is part of overreaction Monday. I mean, I think I saw some sports books. He was plus 900 for Rookie of the Year, and it dropped to plus 200 for Rookie of the Year. You said you saw some bigger numbers.
DraftKings had at the start of the season plus 3,300.
Wow,
to be MVP. He is now plus 200.
Wow. Boy, okay.
Yeah, and other sports books, FanDuel has Daniel Jones at plus 260, and PointsBet has him as plus 300 to be named Rookie of the Year. So he's being included into a lot of the different sportsbook stuff that's going on. I think they're taking advantage of the changeover from Eli to Daniel Jones. I don't think the Giants are a very good team, especially now that Saquon Barkley is going to be gone for a while.
When I said this is another test for another New York team, Daniel Jones does not have Saquon Barkley, and it'd be interesting to see when now he's really thrown in the deep end of the pool.
Well, when is Sterling Shepard supposed to come back? Is he back now? Because he's supposed to come back at some point, but Saquon Barkley has a high ankle sprain. That's 4 to 8 weeks. They're saying it's closer to 8 than the 4.
Wow. Okay.
So he's going to be without Barkley for a while. I don't even know who the backup is on that team for the Giants. So
beyond Daniel Jones, I have no idea. You know who the backup is? It's Eli.
No, I'm talking about running back.
Okay. I thought you meant Daniel Jones.
No. Jones is mobile enough that he might be able to avoid injury for a little while.
He'll need to be.
When is the bye for the Giants? That's coming down a couple of weeks from now. So,
yeah, we got to take a look at that one.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this next week changes these odds again, because I think everyone's jumping on this and everyone's taking advantage of the hype, and that's what the sportsbooks do.
Yep.
And I think if you're banking on Daniel Jones to be an MVP this year, not with the way Mahomes is playing.
Yeah, I know.
You got Mahomes. You do have Brady.
Well, Daniel Jones, he's not going to be MVP, but he could be Rookie of the Year. But I think that's what everyone's looking at. But
does the Rookie of the Year have to start every game?
I don't think so. I think who knows? I mean, it depends on the voters.
Yeah,
so,
because I know Baltimore has a receiver that is actually doing well. I mean, he's been averaging something like 15, 16 yards a catch. He's got multiple touchdowns. I think his first 2 catches went for 40-yard touchdowns. So there's a lot of different active rookies here. So it'll be interesting to see exactly. Maybe I will keep track of Daniel Jones's odds as we go through the season. But again, too soon. One game doesn't do anything. Let's see how he does in 1 or 2 more games before I even think about placing a bet somewhere on this. One other little news and note here. Fox Sports and the Stars Group have brought I don't want to call this a gambling game.
It's a predictive
sports predictive game.
Yeah.
It's called Fox Sports Super 6. It's a free-to-play sports prediction game, and it offers fans a chance to win up to $250,000 in a trio of weekly contests. And
it's not gambling too, because
money.
The the contest players are not putting any money into it, so
there's no entry fee.
It falls outside of gambling.
Yep. So it's legal everywhere in the United States minus Washington State.
Okay.
And it's already the third-ranked trivia app in the Apple App Store. And the first week of its release, 280,000 downloads. So there may be another winner there for Fox. After launching Fox Bet, Stars Group may have another winner here with this stuff.
And the Turnpike Sports Book Report was brought to you by BorgataSports.com. Your favorite casino is now your favorite sports books, available anywhere in New Jersey. BorgataSports.com. Sign up at BorgataSports.com using our promo code PIKE. That's PIKE, and you get a risk-free bet up to $250 and $20 bonus at BorgataCasino.com. Must be 21 years or older and in New Jersey to place a bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And coming up next is our all-important pick segment, which I did 1 and 2 last week. I'm not sure about you.
Same thing.
Yep. Well, stick around. We'll be right back with more Turnpike Sports. We'll get back to the show in a few moments, but I just wanted to take some time and tell everyone about Bean Genius, the smart specialty coffee subscription service. Bean Genius sells freshly roasted coffee from some of the best independent coffee roasters in the country. They feature over 2,000 specialty coffee blends, all at your fingertips at beangenius.com. Here's how it works. Head on over to beangenius.com and take their palate profiler test to find out what coffee best fits your taste. Then select from a variety of subscription plans. Every subscription comes with free shipping, and delivery can even be scheduled for once or twice each month. And based upon your review of each coffee blend you try, Bean Genius actually learns your individual taste preferences and then suggests future coffee blends for you. And now you can get 10% off your Bean Genius subscription when you use our promo code PIKE at checkout. Bean Genius offers a variety of subscription plans to suit any coffee lover's needs. Subscribe with Bean Genius today and start enjoying some of the best tasting coffee around. And save 10% off your coffee plan with promo code PIKE. Welcome back to Turnpike Sports, and this portion of Turnpike Sports is brought to you by PointsBet.com. PointsBet is one of the best sign-up offers in New Jersey. Go to PointsBet.com and sign up using our promo code PIKE. That's P-I-K-E. And when you deposit $50, you'll receive a $100 bonus. That's deposit $50, and you bet with $150. So sign up today at PointsBet.com using our promo code PIKE and start having some real fun. That's promo code PIKE, P-I-K-E. PointsBet. Stay sharp. Must be 21 years or older and in New Jersey to place a bet. Terms and conditions apply. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And welcome back to everyone. This is our pick segment, or as I'm starting to call it, Damnation Alley.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm not off to a good start here. But I went 1 and 2 last week.
So did I. Yep.
If you're following up on TV, I've got the season-to-date records up there between the two of us. Mirror images, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
so,
with different games, too.
Yeah.
Weird.
But, we're both 4 and 5 to start off the season here.
I'm going to be a big comeback this week. I feel good about these.
You keep thinking that.
I feel great about these.
Well, as always, we're going to pick three games, and we'll have our picks up on the Turnpike Sports blog. It's go to turnpikesportsradio.com, click on the blog button, and they'll be posted right after the show is released. And, feel free to comment on them, info at turnpikesportsradio.com to send in your own comments there. You can comment on the blog itself. Or you can just Facebook or Twitter us at Turnpike Sports for both of those. So, without further ado, shall we start the trip down Damnation Alley?
All right. Shall I go first?
Go ahead.
All right. My first game is the Oakland Raiders versus the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are favored by 7, and the over-under is 45. You know, I like what I've seen from Jacoby Brissett this year, and I think he's going to have a really big day against the Oakland 23rd ranked passing defense. And by the way, if you're a fantasy player, that might be a great pickup. It might be a good value pick. So, and I've seen the point spread Colts favored by 6.5 at some of the sports books. And if you see that, I'd jump all over that. But even at 7, I'm taking the Colts and laying the points.
I can't disagree with that because I'm actually really impressed with how Jacoby Brissett's playing.
I like him. I like him.
My first game is going to be the Cleveland Browns at Baltimore Ravens.
Ooh.
Ravens are favored by 7 points at home. There's an over-under of 46. Now, the Browns, with all that hype going into the season, they played very uneven.
Yeah.
They had a really bad first game. They looked great against the Jets, but who knew everyone's going to look great against the Jets? So you can't really tell what the team was until they played the Rams this past week, and they actually played pretty well. They've got the new coach, Freddie Kitchens, there, new offense. Kitchens is being stubborn and not relinquishing any play calling, so it'll be interesting to see how this offense evolves with the new weapons.
It's starting to be a mess there.
It's
got some rumblings of some turmoil coming down the road here.
But I've noticed when they go off script, the Browns play well.
Yeah,
which is nice. Both these teams, the Browns and the Ravens, both teams are 1-2 against the spread this year. Cleveland's 1-0 against the spread on the road. Baltimore's 0-1 at home against the spread. Unfortunately, I think Baltimore's the better team. I think what you're going to see is a really good game between these two teams because they always play well against each other. I think the Ravens are going to end up winning this game, but I think the Browns keep it close, especially like they did last week against the Rams. I'm going with the Browns with the points.
That's an interesting pick. I might even think about putting some money on the over on that one because if they're going to keep it close, they're going to be passing a lot. My next game is the Kansas City Chiefs, who are favored by 6 points, versus the Detroit Lions with an over-under of 54. Look, I know that the Lions are undefeated, but they've never faced this year a team as good as the Chiefs. And you know what? I'm going to look at the coaching matchup of this one. Since Andy Reid took over as head coach of the Chiefs, he's faced a Matt Patricia defense 3 times, and he's averaged over 34 points in those games. And this is with Alex Smith. And I think the Chiefs have too many weapons for the Lions in this one. And I'm surprised the Chiefs are only 6-point favorites. So I'm taking the Chiefs and laying the points.
Yeah, I stayed away from that game.
I love the Chiefs in this one.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure. And like I said, like you mentioned there, this was the first time he's facing that team without Alex Smith as the quarterback. So I don't know how they're going to react to anything with that. But my next game, Jacksonville Jaguars at the Denver Broncos. Denver's favored by 3. There's an over-under of 38. And I just realized I'm giving this away ahead of time, but I didn't go with an over-under this week. So this is all.
I didn't either. No.
Yeah. I didn't really see too many over-unders that were kind of attractive to me. But Denver's getting that 3-point home field advantage because of that mile-high stadium there. I actually like – I was looking forward to seeing Nick Foles as the quarterback for the Jaguars. He's gone for the year, or maybe till week 11.
I tell you,
Gardner Minshew.
I think they got a star on their hands. I think he's the now face of the franchise.
I think Foles got Wentz again.
Yeah, I guess so.
And Jacksonville is 2-1 against the spread. They're 1-0 on the road. Denver's 1-0 at home against the spread. But I'm starting to see the Jaguars look like the AFC Championship team that they were not too long ago. And I love the way Minshew's playing. Denver just doesn't look consistent enough to put together game after game after game of good play, which is why I'm going with the underdog again. I'm going Jaguars +3.
My next game is the Minnesota Vikings versus the Chicago Bears. The Bears are favored by 2.5 with an over-under of 38. And I know a lot of people on TV and the analysts and have their computer programs going. They're jumping all over Minnesota Vikings. But I just like the Bears and their defense. I mean, Kirk Cousins hasn't been very good this year. I think his passer completion percentage is 58.7, and I think he's going to struggle to get 200 yards this week because, look, even the sports books are looking at this as a defensive game. The over-under is 38, which is insanely low. And when that's that low, it's going to be who has the better defense for me. So I'm going to go with the best defense, and I'm taking the Bears and laying the points.
It'll be interesting to watch the line as it gets closer to game time because I know Minnesota with Dalvin Cook there, he's been running up and down the field. Chicago's been having trouble with the run, more so than anything. Their passing defense is still good with Khalil Mack there and all that. But, yeah, I actually may want to see exactly where this is at game time. I might actually put some money on this one at some point. But for the show, my last pick is going to be the Carolina Panthers at the Houston Texans.
I don't know what to expect with Carolina.
Houston is a 5-point favorite. There's an over-under of 46. I was very tempted with the over-under with this, the 46. Do the under. But right now, it's the Cam Newton-less Carolina Panthers. They're starting Kyle Allen, who seemed to surprise everybody last week by throwing 4 touchdowns against the Cardinals. But again, it was the Cardinals. They're still trying to find themselves with that new coaching staff, the new offense, that sort of stuff. I think Houston's going to be a good test of how good this kid Allen is going to be. And I wouldn't be surprised if he repeats what he did last week. Carolina's 1-0 on the road. The Houston Texans are 0-1 against the spread at home. So I'm thinking this also might be a close game, might be a field goal or something. I went Panthers +5.
All right. Shall we recap?
Go right ahead.
I'll recap. I'm taking the Colts, the Chiefs, and the Bears.
And I went Browns, Jaguars, Panthers. I did all underdogs this week.
Wow, the underdog week.
Dog heaven.
Yep. Well, that'll do it for us. Have a great time this weekend. Enjoy the games, and hope you make some money. See you next time on the Turnpike.